The Republic was born in a storm of fury and idealism, yet even as the people celebrated the expulsion of kings, the Senate quietly asserted itself as the cornerstone of the new state. With the monarchy gone, Rome needed continuity, stability, and memory, qualities that the Senate alone could provide. Whereas consuls were elected annually and their power temporary, the senators held office for life, their prestige accumulating over generations. Their decisions, their counsel, and their actions created the framework for governance, a structure that allowed Rome to survive wars, famine, and political crises in ways no single ruler could manage. The Senate's authority, though not codified as legal power, rested upon a combination of tradition, respect, and moral weight. The Romans called this auctoritas, a force intangible yet compelling, rooted in the perception of wisdom, ancestry, and experience. Citizens deferred to senators because they embodied Rome's collective memory, the voice of the ancestors. Magistrates sought senatorial guidance before issuing edicts. Generals required its blessing before marching to war. Even tribunes, those representatives of the common people, had to negotiate their influence around the Senate's invisible power. In this delicate dance, Rome discovered the genius of mixed governance, executive action tempered by advisory permanence. The early Senate was composed entirely of patricians, the descendants of the original Roman aristocracy. These families traced their lineage to Romulus's first consul, and their status was both hereditary and sacred. Archaeological evidence, such as inscriptions and remains of the Curia Hostilia, indicates that these early senators held property, participated in religious offices, and presided over sacred rituals, tying wealth and ancestry directly to political authority. Their homes, often situated on the Palatine Hill, were both symbols of status and centers of influence, where alliances were formed and political maneuvering unfolded in the shadows of private halls. One of the Senate's first challenges in the Republic was to define the limits of executive power. Consuls held imperium, the authority to command armies and enforce laws, but they served only a single year. The Senate's lifetime membership allowed it to provide continuity, oversee long-term strategy, and maintain Rome's internal cohesion. In this new balance, we begin to see the Senate's dual character, advisory yet dominant, moral yet political, invisible yet essential. The Senate also inherited the religious role that had belonged to kings. Every decision, from war to public finance, was framed by ritual and divine approval. Senators consulted augurs, observed auspices, and sanctioned sacrifices, linking their political power to the gods. Temples built under the monarchy now became central points of senatorial activity. Archaeological remains show that the Curia was situated near the Temple of Saturn, and the Regia, sacred spaces that symbolized Rome's eternal covenant between the divine and the civic. The Senate's involvement in religious life reinforced its authority, reminding citizens that civic obedience was also a moral and spiritual duty. Yet, the Senate's dominance created tension. As patricians consolidated power, the plebeians, the common people, comprising the majority of Rome's population, were largely excluded. They were the farmers, artisans, and laborers who supplied the city's food, armies, and labor. Their exclusion from political decision-making planted the seeds for a struggle that would define Rome for centuries, the conflict of the orders. The plebeians demanded recognition, representation, and access to the same legal protections and political privileges enjoyed by patricians. The first years of the Republic were turbulent. Wars with neighboring tribes, internal unrest, and disputes over land required decisive action, and the Senate often found itself mediating between competing interests. Its members acted as both advisors and arbitrators, balancing the demands of generals, consuls, and citizens. The Senate's debates were not merely political exercises, they were performances of authority, where rhetoric, persuasion, and ancestral prestige determined outcomes. Citizens watched, sometimes intervened, but always recognized the Senate as the ultimate arbiter. One key area where the Senate's influence was felt was in Rome's military expansion. Even as consuls led armies into battle, the Senate determined strategy, authorized campaigns, and allocated resources. When conflicts arose with the Latins, Sabines, and Etruscans, it was the Senate that negotiated alliances, dictated terms of surrender, and decided whether to grant citizenship or impose tribute. Its authority in military affairs was not coercive. It did not command armies directly, but it shaped Rome's destiny through planning, oversight, and sanction. Archaeological evidence of fortifications, roads, and settlements from this period demonstrates the Senate's hand in shaping the city's infrastructure to support military and political ambitions. The Senate's influence extended into law and civic administration. While magistrates could propose laws, the Senate guided their drafting, ensured continuity with tradition, and mediated disputes between citizens. It oversaw the administration of justice, the regulation of markets, and the distribution of public lands. Senators themselves were expected to model moral behavior, acting as exemplars of Roman virtue, temperance, and duty. Their lives were entwined with public service, and their authority was reinforced by centuries of family legacy and ancestral prestige. Even festivals, ceremonies, and public religious observances were tied to senatorial authority. Senators sponsored games, funded temple construction, and presided over sacrifices. The Senate's participation in ritual life created a direct connection between civic governance and spiritual legitimacy. The people came to associate the Senate with the well-being of the city, viewing political leadership as inseparable from moral and divine order. Archaeological finds, including inscriptions, dedicatory plaques, and remnants of altars, reveal the Senate's role in funding and regulating religious practice, demonstrating that its influence was as much cultural as it was political. As the Republic matured, the Senate's authority was continually tested. Plebeian resistance grew stronger, challenging patrician dominance and demanding reforms. Tribunes were elected to represent the interests of the people, but even these officials had to negotiate their authority within a system shaped by centuries of senatorial control. The Senate's ability to adapt, to absorb challenges while maintaining its core influence, was a testament to its resilience and strategic acumen. The early Senate also had to navigate external threats. Neighboring Latin cities, Etruscan kings, and Sabine communities posed constant military and diplomatic challenges. Senators debated whether to pursue war, negotiate treaties, or integrate conquered peoples into Rome's social and political framework. These decisions required a deep understanding of Rome's strategic position, the loyalty of its citizens, and the religious expectations that guided public action. Successes strengthened the Senate's prestige, while failures tested its credibility, teaching early Romans the delicate balance between authority and accountability. Even within the Senate, politics was a delicate art. Families competed for influence, alliances shifted, and personal rivalries often determined the outcome of critical debates. The Senate's authority rested on consensus, persuasion, and the weight of tradition. Its deliberations were often long and complex, reflecting both the competing interest of its members and the gravity of the decisions at hand. Senators debated taxation, land distribution, military conscription, and foreign policy, all while maintaining the veneer of ancestral wisdom and moral responsibility. By the mid-Republic, the Senate had solidified its role as the primary arbiter of Roman life. Its influence was visible in the city's architecture, in the grandeur of the Forum, in the temples and public buildings funded or sanctioned by senators. Its decisions shaped Rome's expansion, legal framework, religious life, and civic identity. It had transformed from an advisory council under a king into a permanent institution, guiding a complex society through war, peace, and political evolution. And yet the Senate's dominance was not uncontested. The plebeians, long excluded from meaningful political participation, were preparing to challenge its authority. Tribunes, popular assemblies, and demands for legal codification foreshadowed the social struggles that would dominate the next phase of Roman history. The Senate's rise was complete in terms of power and prestige, but the story of Rome's political evolution was far from finished. As we conclude this chapter of Rome's history, we see the Senate as more than a governing body. It was the embodiment of Rome's memory, a guardian of tradition, a mediator between divine will and civic action. It was both political and moral, invisible yet essential, advisory yet dominant. Its rise demonstrates the genius of Roman governance, an institution that could survive kings, wars, and social unrest, adapting continuously while maintaining its authority. As the Republic settled into its early decades, the Senate's role became ever more central to Rome's political, social, and spiritual life. Though consuls held imperium and armies marched at their command, the Senate remained the repository of continuity and wisdom. Its lifetime membership allowed it to accumulate experience, knowledge, and perspective that no annually elected magistrate could rival. Each senator carried not only his personal authority, but the weight of centuries of tradition, a bridge connecting Rome's foundational myths with the challenges of the present. Daily life in Rome was intertwined with senatorial influence in ways the people might scarcely have realized. Senators controlled land allocations, ensuring that the city's farmers and soldiers could sustain the state. They supervised the distribution of grain, mediated disputes over property, and even intervened in family conflicts when the welfare of the city was at stake. Wealthy senators sponsored public works, temples, roads, and aqueducts, shaping the physical environment of Rome while reinforcing their own authority. Archaeological excavations reveal evidence of these interventions: inscriptions commemorating senatorial dedications, foundations of temples funded by patrician families, and urban infrastructure designed to serve both military and civilian needs. Religion remained inseparable from governance. Every decision was framed by ritual, sacrifice, and divine sanction. Senators acted as intermediaries between the people and the gods, interpreting omens, presiding over ceremonies, and safeguarding Rome's sacred traditions. The Curia itself was situated among sacred spaces, including the Regia and the Temple of Saturn, reminding citizens that civic obedience was also a spiritual duty. Senators' participation in religious life reinforced their moral authority, creating a fusion of political and divine legitimacy that was uniquely Roman. Despite its power, the Senate faced constant challenges. The plebeians, who made up the majority of Rome's population, were excluded from meaningful participation in the early Republic. They demanded legal rights, political representation, and access to offices previously reserved for patricians. These tensions laid the groundwork for what historians would call the conflict of the orders. The plebeian struggle was not simply political but social, demanding recognition in a system long dominated by aristocratic privilege. The Senate's response combined adaptation and strategic compromise. Senators negotiated with tribunes, approved concessions, and gradually allowed the integration of plebeian voices through new assemblies and reforms. This incremental evolution preserved the Senate's authority, while gradually expanding civic participation. In doing so, the Senate demonstrated one of its most remarkable qualities: resilience. It was able to absorb social pressure without losing its essential power, maintaining its position at the heart of Roman governance even as Rome itself transformed. Military and foreign affairs also underscored the Senate's supremacy. While consuls commanded armies, the Senate determined strategy, authorized campaigns, and oversaw logistics. Debates over war and peace were not abstract. They affected the survival of the city and the lives of every Roman citizen. Decisions about alliances, the integration of conquered peoples, and the granting of citizenship were made in the Senate chambers, often after prolonged deliberation and consultation with omens. Success strengthened the Senate's prestige, while failure tested its legitimacy. Through this continuous engagement, the Senate became the principal architect of Rome's territorial expansion and political influence. The Senate also guided legal and social norms. Senators oversaw the codification of laws, the adjudication of disputes, and the regulation of civic practices. They shaped Rome's moral framework, enforcing standards of behavior that reinforced patrician values while gradually accommodating plebeian demands. By linking legal authority with ancestral prestige, the Senate created a governance model in which obedience to law was also obedience to tradition and social hierarchy. Archaeological evidence underscores the Senate's pervasive influence. Inscriptions on bronze tablets and stone monuments record senatorial decrees, dedications to gods, and the funding of public works. The remains of the Curia Hostilia and the Forum reveal the spatial centrality of the Senate in Rome's urban life. Temples, public squares, and markets were all oriented around these civic institutions, reflecting a city designed to celebrate and reinforce senatorial authority. By the mid-Republic, the Senate had transformed from an advisory council to the backbone of Roman governance. It managed the city's finances, controlled the army indirectly, influenced legislation, regulated religious practices, and maintained continuity across generations. It became the arena where Rome's most pressing political, social, and military decisions were debated and enacted. Its members were expected to embody virtue, wisdom, and a commitment to the state above personal ambition. In this way, the Senate was not merely a political body, but a moral institution, shaping both the structure of government and the character of the city itself. Yet the stage was set for further challenges. The plebeians' growing demand for political equality, combined with internal power struggles among patrician families, would drive the next phase of Rome's transformation. Tribunes and popular assemblies would rise, legal reforms would be enacted, and social hierarchies would be questioned in ways that the early Senate could scarcely anticipate. The seeds of reform, compromise, and conflict sown during this period would shape Rome for centuries. As we reflect on the rise of the Roman Senate, it becomes clear that its power was not merely a matter of law or military might. It was rooted in tradition, continuity, religion, and moral authority. It grew gradually, survived monarchy, endured revolt, and adapted to social change. The Senate's story is a story of resilience, influence, and strategic patience, revealing the genius of Roman governance and the enduring power of institutions built on trust, prestige, and collective memory. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the rise of Rome's most enduring institution. If you enjoyed exploring how the Senate shaped politics, society, and daily life, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell so you never miss an episode. Stay tuned for our next video as we continue to unravel Rome's early history and explore the fascinating struggle between social classes in patricians versus plebeians, social hierarchies in early Rome,